And with a happy Saturday to everybody, here is a October 5th news of the day kind of video. Starting off with, hey, you ever been at a hockey game and thought, this beer was $10, this hot dog was 8, 50-50 ticket cost me $20. I'm not going to see that money again. I wish there was a way I could lose more money at a hockey game because these tickets only cost me $390 American. That was apparently the starting price for lower bowl tickets if you wanted them for the Vegas game for their opening night. So if you wanted a way to lose more money at a hockey game, how about sports books at a hockey game? Yeah, William Hill Sportsbook is coming to Capital One Arena in Washington. And they're aiming to have it in there next year. Now, for people who say, well, wait a minute, sports books, why doesn't Vegas have one in their arena? Because there's sports books everywhere in Las Vegas. Throughout the city, there's sports books everywhere. So they don't really need it. But Washington, now you have another way to spend money. Yay! And the owner, CEO of it, said that, when the Caps were down 1-0 the other night, and they came back and won, that would have been a good opportunity for people in the arena to gamble on what was going to happen because people like to gamble on their team when they're losing, and you get good odds that way. And I thought, yeah, that's even another way to take money from people. Yeah, and it's just, I'm floored. It does have some hoops to go through before it's actually in the building. There are some things that they have to do. They have to apply and jump through some hoops, but yeah, it looks like it's going to happen. Moving along, Elliot Friedman. The Jets apparently have to talk Byfuglien out of retiring. That's the word from Frege on this, that Byfuglien's leaning towards, retirement. And having watched the first couple of games for Winnipeg, this team could use some defense. This is exactly what we thought could happen, where it's you got to outscore your mistakes. And they've allowed 8 goals in their first 2 games. And 10 goals in their first 2 games. They lost that first one. They're going to want to fix that. If he does retire, it leads to some interesting questions about how they fix that blue line. Apparently he is leaning towards retirement. The Dallas Stars, well, they've had to call up basically their farm team. They've called up L'Esperance, Hanley, Camano, and Rhett Gardner. And if you don't know who Camano and Rhett Gardner is, that's fine. You don't know who Joel Hanley is either. Joel L'Esperance, you don't. All right, if you don't know who any of these guys are, then that kind of illustrates that Dallas is in some trouble already when you look at the amount of injuries. So we're all hoping. I would think in Dallas fandom that there aren't any further injuries. Dickinson's only supposed to be out for about a week. It's the other 2 injuries that look more long term. So we'll see how things turn out. Speaking of injuries, last night Jacob Middleton takes a brutal hit from Ryan Reeves. He was actually replacing Dalton Prout in the lineup. He had just been called up. So Prout gets injured, goes on the IR. Middleton comes in, and Reeves welcomes you. You're replacing Prout, right? Kabam. So that's another team that's going to have their depth tested early, is the San Jose Sharks. I haven't heard anything about Middleton going on IR or anything, but it was a rough hit. I wouldn't be surprised if he misses some time. He'll probably be in the lineup tonight. That's usually the way that works. When I say, he could miss some time, they don't. We'll come back to that. Thomas will be out for the St. Louis Blues in tonight's game. He's out with an upper body injury. They're not saying a lot about it other than it's not a big deal. It's only a day-to-day thing. So St. Louis is a team with a lot of depth. I wouldn't think it's going to be that big of a deal. The New Jersey Devils are saying that Corey Schneider last night, and Taylor Hall reported this first when asked, that it was lower body cramping that Schneider was having. So he could very well play tonight, apparently. I don't know. It's one of those things where you want to look at it and go, it's fine. Or you can look at it and say, man, can Corey Schneider buy a break? They're up 4-2. He leaves. The team blows the lead, loses the game in a shootout. So he had a half-decent game, but doesn't get a result from it. We'll see. We'll keep an eye on Corey Schneider and see just how well his body holds up this year over the full 82-game schedule. Bruce Boudreau is hinting heavily that the Minnesota Wild are going to be changing their first line, saying that Parise, Stahl, and Zuccarello struggled and didn't have a whole lot of chemistry as a trio. So don't be surprised if they get broken up, and then don't be surprised if they're right back together in the second period of that same game. Because Boudreau can definitely put lines in a mixer. This is why when people talk to me about, hey, why aren't you reporting on who this guy's on this line? Why aren't you reporting on that? Because lines very often at the NHL level do end up going through a blender, and in game they can change. The Oilers, as a for instance, Draisaitl and McDavid were on separate lines until they weren't. There were points during that first game where they were together. So, what line a guy's on, you can look at overall ice time, I think, is more of an indicator than which line he's on. And in this case, who gets bumped down. If Parise, Stahl, and Zuccarello aren't together, who gets bumped down? And don't ask Peter Laviolette. Peter Laviolette in Nashville doesn't want to number his lines. And I agree with that. I think when people complain about, oh, this guy's on line 2, he's not on line 1. Come on. Honestly, line 2 plays pretty darn near the same amount of time as line 1 on most teams. So it's a minor difference. Speaking of minor differences, it's amazing how one between a cable company and a network can turn into this. If you're a Colorado fan, you're not going to see the game if you're a cable subscriber to Comcast, DirecTV, or Dish. Because the Altitude Sports TV channel is in the midst of arguing with them over how much it's going to cost to be on those cable providers' systems. Now, the argument is still the same one, that Comcast, DirecTV, and Dish say Altitude Sports TV does not drive ratings worthy of the amount of money that's being bantered about here, and we're not going to carry it. Ratings just aren't high enough for us to warrant carrying it at the price that it's cost us up until now. And Altitude Sports is saying, look, we just want things to stay the way they've been. And Altitude Sports TV will tell you that Comcast, DirecTV, and Dish have been greedy. DirecTV, Comcast, and Dish will tell you Altitude Sports TV's been greedy. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say I've heard enough about American cable and satellite companies to say it's cable and satellite companies for the most part. I've heard horrible things about people dealing with Comcast, as a for instance, and this is too bad because the Colorado fans are stuck in the middle. So if you tune into the NHL Network, you're blacked out. You're told that due to regional restrictions, you can't watch their home games. Blackouts are so outdated. And we see them in Canada too. I see them here. I don't understand why we still have regional blackouts. I don't get it. I don't understand why with TSN, like I have center ice package so I can watch the TSN games involving Winnipeg and Montreal and Toronto. I don't understand the regional. I understand the national rights belong to Sportsnet up here, and you can't have TSN having a nationwide. You know what? That's so outdated that the next time that the Canadian contract comes up, I hope they do away with that. So if a game's on Sportsnet and it's the Jets and the Leafs, I can watch it. I don't have to have center ice to watch it. And nobody else should have to either. It feels like cable companies and satellite companies are behind the times. And for most, if you're under the age of 25, you may not have cable. You may not plan to have cable. You just go through satellite streaming services or whatever other services you want to use. Between you guys, I have nothing to do with that. But this is affecting Colorado fans who want to watch their team. This feels like it could be a really big season, and because of this fight, they don't get to watch their team. That would be very frustrating. So hopefully this gets resolved soon. The problem is I haven't heard anything about it getting resolved. Like I haven't heard anything about solid negotiations. I don't think Comcast, DirecTV, or Dish, I don't think they feel a ton of pressure. I mean, if you are a subscriber to one of these three services, by all means, feel free to call them. Complain. Call them. Complain. But in my experience as a call center, you may be getting somebody who has absolutely nothing to do with it. That's highly likely. Probably has heard this complaint numerous times and throws it into a queue somewhere that just drops off the face of the earth. And the actual people in charge, they're not really overly concerned, because Altitude Sports TV to them is small peanuts, and they're not going to pay big money for it, or what they perceive as being too much money. It's not big money by their standard, but it's too much money. So for Abs fans, hopefully this gets resolved really, really soon. This is a really stupid way of doing things. And again, it just feels like cable companies and the way that sports is broadcast, they're way behind the times. And it's time to modernize and do things a little different. And we'll see whether or not they come around. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I'll talk to you again soon.